Hare Krishna. In this session, we'll begin with the overview of Srimad Bhagavad Gita and synopsis of chapter 1. So, this is based on the teachings of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Let's begin with the prayer. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Sapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Today early morning we got the news that His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj, a very senior disciple and a close associate of Srila Prabhupada, a truly exceptional Vaishnava and a spiritual leader and a very loving ISKCON leader, he left us all for the spiritual world. Maharaj was very well known all over the world for his kind, loving and compassionate nature towards everyone who met him. I was extremely fortunate to receive his personal association in numerous occasions and experience Maharaj's gentleness and love. My heart was totally touched with his behavior with all of us. And currently my heart is feeling very, very heavy and grief with pain and experiencing actually Maharaj's separation. Maharaj had dedicated his life for serving Srila Prabhupada and Lord Krishna. I pray to their Lordship to give us all strength to bear the separation of Maharaj's departure and also give us necessary intelligence to continue the legacy of His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj. Srila Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj Ki Jai. This class will be dedicated in loving memory of our dear spiritual father, His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj. Thank you. So we begin with the appearance of Bhagavad Gita. So Bhagavad Gita actually is a part of Mahabharata. The Mahabharata is a great Indian epic, and Srimad Bhagavad Gita appears in the Bhishma Parva, which is the 6th Parva, from chapter number 25 to chapter number 42. There are 18 chapters of Mahabharata in which the Bhagavad Gita appears. And Mahabharata is a story about the Kuru family, the Kuru dynasty, and we discussed some part of it in the introduction and preface and setting the scenes. So if we see that there are different levels of discussion in the Mahabharata. The first level is the discussion between Vaishampayan and Janmejaya. So in the Kuru family, if you see towards the end of the Kuru dynasty. Maharaj Parikshit was the son of Abhimanyu, who was the son of Arjuna. Right? So when Maharaj Parikshit was cursed to die in 7 days, then he left everything. Then he heard Srimad Bhagavatam from Sukadeva Goswami, and his son was coronated as the king. His son name was Janmejaya. So Janmejaya was his son. So the first level of discussion, or the Janmejaya actually heard about his family history from Vaishampayan Rishi. So Vaishampayan Rishi is a disciple of Vyasdev. So Vaishampayan Rishi narrated the Mahabharata to Janmejaya, in which the Bhagavad Gita was also there. And in Bhagavad Gita, the discussion actually begins by Dhritarashtra asking question to Sanjaya. So this is the second level of narration. And the third level of narration is within the Bhagavad Gita, there is a discussion between Arjuna and Krishna. Arjuna is asking question and Krishna is replying to those questions. So these are three level of discussion. So whenever we study in detail, we'll see sometimes Arjuna is speaking, sometimes Sanjaya is speaking. So that's why I wanted to make it clear that there are three levels of discussion, and this is the mostly we'll be focusing on these two levels, which is Sanjaya and Dhritarashtra. In fact, Dhritarashtra is only asking the question in the beginning. The rest is discussion between Krishna and Arjuna, which Sanjaya is narrating. Bhagavad Gita, also known as Gita Upanishad, and it is a song of God, and it is essence of all the Vedic knowledge. So there are three pillars of establishing the authoritative teachings of the Vedas, and they are called as Prasthana Traya. Traya means three, and this is Prasthana Traya is establishing the authoritative teachings of the Vedas. And within that there are three, which is Shruti, Smriti and Nyaya. So Shruti is which is directly spoken by the Lord, and Smriti is what is heard and remembered and narrated back. So these are the narration which is given by the sages, and Nyaya is actually Vedanta Sutra. So Bhagavad Gita is a special position. It is within the Mahabharata, as we saw it's in the Bhishma Parva, 6th Parva. So Bhagavad Gita is those 18 chapters in Mahabharata, which is a Smriti. So Bhagavad Gita can be considered as Shruti, which is the direct words of the Lord. So Bhagavad Gita is a Shruti within a Smriti. That's why it is categorized like this: Shruti within Smriti. Shruti is something which is directly heard from the Lord, and Smriti which is heard and then remembered and then rewritten by the sages with their own realization. So Srila Prabhupada, he wanted us to study this book very carefully. According to Srila Prabhupada, Bhagavad Gita is our basic practical preaching book, and he wanted us to study Bhagavad Gita inside out, which will help us to govern our life. Inside out means we studied it in details. That's what we are trying to achieve in these sessions. We study Prabhupada says that we should know Bhagavad Gita as the Christian knows their Bible. So Christians are, they go to church every Sunday and then they read Bible very carefully. So similarly, Prabhupada also wanted us to study Bhagavad Gita very, very carefully, and then live the life based on the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. Also, Bhagavad Gita needs to be understood in a flow. The philosophy has to be understood. It's a flow of information, a flow of knowledge. So it should not be studied in isolation. Isolation means studying certain verses, like, you just pick up one chapter, one verse, and just study that verse and try to understand. Then take another chapter, another verse. So it should not be like that. We should at least study once from beginning to end and understand the flow of the philosophy. And when we study in that way, then we will understand that it's a cohesive unit. Everything fits together. In Bhagavad Gita, there are wide variety of actually topics discussed. And the essential message is what is the best sadhya and what is the best sadhana. What is best sadhya means what is the best goal and what is the best way to attain that goal. That is the sadhana. What are the best practices? So Krishna suggests those practices to Arjuna. He discusses varieties of topics, but then finally he just tells him that what is the best sadhya and sadhana. Shankaracharya, who actually wrote 7 verses on the Gita Mahatmya, which we studied towards the end of the introduction of Bhagavad Gita. So we studied those 7 verses. So Shankaracharya, he describes Bhagavad Gita as river of nectar, which is flowing from the mouth of Lord Krishna. So it's a complete nectar which is flowing, and one must take advantage of that nectar. And then he says that Lord speaks Gita out of compassion for the living entities. So he was compassionate on Arjuna, and he is also compassionate towards all the living entities. So Krishna's compassion is actually flowing through Bhagavad Gita. So that's why it becomes very, very important for us to study this book very systematically, very carefully. In Bhagavad Gita, there are totally 18 chapters. So I have put those 18 chapters as numbers, 18, 1 to 18. And sometimes we'll see that, the verses, depending on the commentators, they might group the verse. Normally a verse will have 4 lines. So sometimes they club like 2 more lines to make sense of that verse, to make a continuity. But in all there are 700 verses, and the chapters are divided like chapter 1 to chapter 18, and there are few chapters which are very long, and there are few chapters which are very, very short. So chapter number 12 and chapter number 15, they are very short, 20 verses. And chapter 18 is the longest, which is 78 verses, followed by chapter 2, which is 72 verses. And then different acharyas have named the chapters differently on the basis of the focus they are putting on whatever points they are going to make. So depending on different focus, they name the chapter a little differently. Now often the Bhagavad Gita is known as Yoga Shastra. So what is Yoga Shastra? So we have heard this term yoga, and Bhagavad Gita is called Yoga Shastra. And how we say that it's called as Yoga Shastra? Because the word yoga appears 78 times. This is mentioned by Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. All these technical details, he mentions that the word yoga comes 78 times, 15 out of 18 chapters. And the word yogi comes 28 times, yukta comes 49 times. So these are yoga, yogi, yukta, these are all connected to the word yoga. It's a different way of writing this, and we'll go into details of what these words mean. But in total, there are 155 occurrences of this yoga or yogi or yukta. And in 155 verses out of 700 verses of Bhagavad Gita, this word is used. So more than 20% of the verses have the word yoga, or it's a connected word, yogi or yukta. So yoga means to connect. So connect what? So connect Atma with the Paramatma. That is actually yoga. Yoga doesn't mean the exercises which we do. That is also yoga, but that is a part of Ashtanga yoga. And that exercises which you do, that is called as Hatha yoga. Ashtanga yoga has 8 steps. So out of that, one of the steps in Ashtanga yoga is Hatha yoga. Other step is pranayama. So you heard this yoga and pranayama. So that is part of Ashtanga yoga. But here yoga means to connect. Connect Atma with Paramatma. And the Bhagavad Gita is, the essence of Bhagavad Gita is this process of yoga. Bhagavad Gita analyzes various means of connecting, because we see yoga means to connect, and About 20% of the verses are talking about connection. So if 20% of the verses are talking about this connection, so what is this connection? So those connections are actually discussed in details by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. He analyzes various means of connection. And then finally Krishna concludes, bhakti is the best way to connect with Krishna. This is Krishna's opinion. And we want to connect with Krishna's. So we must listen to what he's saying. So his point of view is bhakti is the best way of connection. And before the Bhagavad Gita was spoken, Arjuna, was disturbed. We'll see in the chapter 1, towards the middle of the chapter 1, starts towards the middle and goes till the end of the chapter 1 and beginning few verses of chapter 2. Arjuna is completely overwhelmed. He is seeing his relatives in the battlefield and he is totally bewildered by seeing them. And then there are symptoms he shows. His mind is bewildered. And there are physical symptoms he shows. But the good thing is Arjuna takes shelter of Krishna. So before the Bhagavad Gita was spoken, Arjuna was in Viyoga, means he was disconnected with Krishna. But after the Bhagavad Gita was spoken, he again got established in yoga. What is established in yoga means his intention became same as the intention of the Lord. He became one in intention with the Lord. And he said, towards the end of Bhagavad Gita, he says that Karishye Vachanam Tava. Whatever you say, I will do. Whatever the Lord will say, Arjuna is going to do that. So he was again established in yoga after hearing Bhagavad Gita. So one is expected to, when we begin reading Bhagavad Gita, one is expected in general that we are in Viyoga, means we are not connected with Krishna. But after hearing the message of the Lord, then we have to come to the same conclusion. We become connected with Krishna again. So that is the goal of reading Bhagavad Gita. So as we said, there are the word yoga and yukta, yogi is used many times. So it's a yoga shastra. So if you see that Bhagavad Gita has 18 chapters and divided into 3 parts. The first 6 chapter is talking about karma yoga, which is leading to bhakti yoga. And the 7 to 12 chapters in the center is bhakti yoga. And then 13 to 18 chapter is jnana yoga, which is leading to bhakti yoga. So it talks about karma in the beginning, and it talks about bhakti in the center, and then again it talks about jnana, which is again leading to bhakti yoga. So in essence, we can say that the bhakti yoga is a central theme of Bhakti yoga is a central theme of Bhagavad Gita. So bhakti yoga is nothing but the devotional service. We engage in the service of the Lord. So the objective of Lord Krishna is to establish bhakti yoga, devotional service, as the supreme means above all other systems of yoga. So this is the objective of Krishna. Okay? And then Krishna actually systematically takes from the reader of Bhagavad Gita from chapter 1 to chapter 13 in such a way that he presents himself that bhakti yoga is the supreme most. And that should be our conclusion, because that is Krishna's conclusion. So acharyas, or different commentators, they say the reasons why bhakti is in the middle. So if you see, karma is first 6, and then bhakti is in the middle, and then this is karma, this is bhakti, and this is jnana. So it's in the middle. So why it is in the middle? So the acharyas say that bhakti is rahasya. Rahasya means very secret. And bhakti is the essence of all the scriptures, which is given in chapter 15, verse 15. The secret of all the, or is the essence of all the scriptures. Sorry, not secret. Is the essence of all the scriptures. And then the second point they are saying that karma and jnana are dead without bhakti. Hence, it is surrounded by both. So they have karma and jnana, they have no meaning on its own. That's why bhakti, being in the center, empowers karma and jnana. And bhakti gives life to karma and jnana, both the yogas. And then third thing they say that is generally we do not disclose anything which is secret until we become intimate. Hence, out of respect, bhakti is placed in the middle. So anything which is very secret, we just keep it tight. We don't open it right in the beginning. So that's why bhakti is in the middle. It's not given in the right in the beginning. And then the fourth one is the most important thing is kept in the middle. As for example, king is traveling with his army, is always in the middle and is always protected. So similarly, bhakti is in the center. So these are some of the reasons the acharyas gave why bhakti yogas, which is predominantly discussed in chapter 7 to 12. It's not that bhakti is not discussed in 1 to 6 or 13 to 18. In those chapters also bhakti is, in fact, every chapter, if when we see, we'll read in details, I will see every chapter has bhakti. Krishna leads everything from karma to bhakti, or jnana to bhakti, or any other ashtanga yoga to bhakti. So that's why bhakti is the center of Bhagavad Gita. Now those 700 verses, if we see, out of those 700 verses, 575 verses are spoken by Lord Krishna, 83 of the verses are spoken by Arjuna, Sanjaya spoke 41 verse, and Dhritarashtra spoke only one verse, which is the first verse. So this is how the verses are divided. So out of 700, majority of the verses is spoken by Krishna, 575. But we see that the rest of the 125 verses are actually not spoken by Krishna. But when we hear that Bhagavad Gita is a song of God, then we understand that it should be spoken by Krishna. So what about those other verses which is not spoken by Krishna? Do they have the same efficacy? Like in the first verse, it is spoken by Dhritarashtra. It is not spoken by Krishna. And Dhritarashtra was an attached person. So should we consider that because he was attached to his son, and he was kind of evil-minded, should we not read those verses or what? So we might have those doubts. So that's why our acharyas, very nicely they talk about this on verses that are not spoken by Lord Krishna. So Sri Baladev Vidyabhushan, to whom this book Bhagavad Gita has been dedicated by Srila Prabhupada. So Baladev Vidyabhushan, he explains this, that the essential message is actually given by Krishna. So 575 verses is the essential message. This is given by the Krishna. And those verses which are spoken by Krishna, the other verses are actually context which leads to or brings to the importance of the message which was given by Krishna. So whatever is Krishna's contribution, actually, the other verses, they bring out the importance of what Krishna is going to speak. So Krishna's words are transcendental, and the other verses, being in proximity to Krishna's verses, they also acquire transcendental characteristics. And then the example is given that in a salt mine, if there's a mine which is of salt, and there are some rocks which are there in the salt mine. So because they are in the salt mine, they acquire those characteristics of the salt. So they also become salty. So similarly, the proximity of the other verses to Krishna's verses, so they shape their quality. So that is the reason that these other verses are also very important. So normally it's a good idea to recite the verses of Bhagavad Gita, like reciting Krishna's words, they are actually very purifying in nature, and it is considered as also austerity of speech. So even the verses which are not spoken by Krishna, for example, the verses which is spoken by, let's say, Dhritarashtra, very first verse. So that verse is, when we chant, is also purifying. So we should not eliminate that and say, oh, Dhritarashtra was not a good person, so I will not chant that mantra. No, that is not true. That is explained by Sri Baldev Vidyabhushan, that one must consider that this is a part of Bhagavad Gita. Right? You take the Bhagavad Gita as it is. You take all the verses. And those verses, because those verses were spoken, Krishna could speak those 575 verses. So in that mode, we study all the verses which is either spoken by Dhritarashtra or spoken by Sanjaya, because Sanjaya is doing a lot of narration. But Sanjaya, sometimes you will see that Sanjaya is saying something which is discussion between Duryodhana and Dronacharya and all other characters. But because it is part of Gita, and because it has a proximity to Krishna's words, because of Krishna's presence, they also acquire the transcendental nature. Okay, so that's why we recite those verses also, or we memorize. In case we have to memorize, it is also a good idea to memorize those verses. But especially memorizing the verses spoken by Krishna has a lot of benefit. So now Srila Prabhupada's commentary will say that they are based on, predominantly his commentary is based on the commentary of Sri Baldev Vidyabhushan. So Baldev Vidyabhushan's commentary is Gita Bhushan. So Prabhupada commentary is also based on the works of Sri Baldev Vidyabhushan. He dedicated this book to Sri Baldev Vidyabhushan. But at the same time, from time to time, Srila Prabhupada has also mentioned from the commentaries of other acharyas like Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So Baldev Vidyabhushan's commentary is Gita Bhushan Bhashya. Bhashya means commentary. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's, his commentary is named as Sarartha Varshini Tika. And then Srila Prabhupada is also taken from Sridhar Swami's Subodhini, and a lot of verses Srila Prabhupada actually has taken commentary from Sripad Ramanujacharya. And Sripad Ramanujacharya's commentary is Gita Bhasya. That is his commentary. Prabhupada has mentioned, I distinctly remember, Prabhupada writes, according to Sripad Ramanujacharya, this is what it means. So Prabhupada has, in his commentary, we'll find the works of the commentaries of other acharyas also. Plus, he has given his own thoughts too, based on his understanding. And this is an important point to understand, that when we read Srila Prabhupada's purport, which is known as Bhaktivedanta purports, so we will see sometimes, particularly in chapter 2, 3, 4, like that, we'll see the commentary sometimes feels that, Prabhupada is, if Karma Yoga is given, or Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga word is used in the verse, Prabhupada translates that to Bhakti Yoga or devotional service. So sometimes we get confused with that. Why is he doing that? So what Prabhupada is doing is, he knows the essence of Gita. The essence of Gita is towards the last chapters, 18 chapters, 66, 65th and 66th verse. And the essence of Gita is the bhakti process. So what Prabhupada is trying to do is, he is trying to make his purports, or he has done the purport in such a way that it is bhakti-centric message, because that is the ultimate goal. So what Krishna does after 18th chapter, so 18th, 66th, Krishna says, Sarva Dharman Parityaja Mam Ekam Sharanam Vrajam, which is the Charan Sloka. Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo Mokshashyami Masucha. So according to Sripad Ramanujacharya, That's a Charama sloka. That's the most important sloka of Bhagavad Gita. And that is, in that verse, actually, Krishna is saying, whatever I have told you earlier, just forget about that. Just forget about that, and then Maam Ekam Sharanam Braja. Just surrender unto me. And Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo. I will erase your sin. I will take care of all your sin. And then I'll also give you moksha. So that is what Krishna wants at the end of Bhagavad Gita. But Prabhupada, being very merciful, he gives that message right in the beginning. In every purport, he is giving the same message. So that's why, we don't get confused by what Prabhupada is meaning. So that's why I put this. While reading Prabhupada's purports, we should keep this in mind. And this thing, actually, Srila Prabhupada actually giving in his, it's not that he doesn't understand. So in the Bhagavad Gita 2nd chapter, 72nd verse, purport, in the last paragraph, Prabhupada says that. So in the second chapter, it's the summary of the entire Bhagavad Gita. That's how it is mentioned, summary of the content of Gita. So in the summary, in that chapter, if Karma Yoga is discussed, Jnana Yoga, part of Jnana Yoga is discussed, those kind of things are discussed. Basically everything is touched upon. But Prabhupada translates that to Bhakti Yoga. But towards the end of second chapter, he is writing, Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur has summarized this second chapter of Bhagavad Gita as being the contents of the whole text, means the whole Bhagavad Gita. In the Bhagavad Gita, the subject matter are Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. Right? So this is all discussed in second chapter. In the second chapter, Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga have been clearly discussed. So he is writing in his purport that these are the things which is clearly discussed, and a glimpse of Bhakti Yoga has been given. So it's not that Srila Prabhupada don't understand. He is saying that a glimpse of Bhakti Yoga is given, but mostly it's a Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga discussed. It is clearly discussed. So Bhakti Yoga has been given as the content of the complete text. So what I am trying to say over here is, Prabhupada understands that, but he knows what is Krishna's purpose of saying Bhagavad Gita. So wherever, if there is a Karma Yoga or a Jnana Yoga, his words are used, Prabhupada connects that Karma Yoga with Bhakti. He doesn't cancels that, but he says Karma Yoga needs to be done with Bhakti. Jnana Yoga needs to be done with Bhakti. Because at the end of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is going to say that. So he brings that point right in the beginning. Then next is about chapter 1. So chapter 1 has two major sections. So chapter 1, verse 1 to 27 and 28 to 46. So 1 to 27 discusses about the introduction or preparation for the war. And 28 to 46 is Arjuna's doubt and lamentation. So in Sanskrit, 1 to 27 can be said as Sainya Nirikshan Yoga. Means he is preparing for the war and he is assessing Sainya. Sainya means the armies, or observing the armies. So Prabhupada has named this chapter as Observing the Armies in the Battlefield of Kurukshetra. And the 28 to 46, Arjuna requests Krishna to take the chariot in the middle of the battlefield, and then he gets bewildered. So that part is called as Arjuna Vishada Yoga, Arjuna's lamentation. Arjuna Vishada, he gets doubt and he is lamenting, seeing all his relatives. So when we are going to discuss the chapters, we are going to go through the overview, and then we are going into details of those verses also. All this categorization, and with this to this verses, what is happening. This is very nicely done by His Grace Burijan Prabhu. So I have just taken whatever he has given and I'm directly putting his notes over here. So this makes us clear that what are we going to study. So verse 1 to 27 and In those, again, 1 to 13 is Sanjaya informs the King Dhritarashtra of Duryodhana's appraisals of the relative fighting strength. So the strength of these armies are discussed in 1 to 13, and then 14 to 19 is 14th verse in particular, Krishna's arrival in Bhagavad Gita. First time his arrival is described, and the conch shell are blown. And then 20 to 27 is Arjuna is requesting Krishna to draw the chariot between the two armies to see who has come to fight from both the sides. And then 28 to 46 is Arjuna's doubts and lamentation. Right? So Arjuna, after seeing his relatives, his mind started reeling and thinking about how the battle will finish, his family and its tradition, and he sees a great sinful reaction is awaiting him if he is participating in this war. And then Arjuna feels that it is better to be killed unarmed than to fight. And Arjuna, then his mind is overwhelmed with great grief, casts aside his bow and sits down upon his chariot. And then he tells Krishna that I cannot fight. Right? So this is the overview of the section, which is section B, verse 28 to 46. And then we'll see that the many a times Krishna will be called by different names, right? Krishna is all attractive. That's the most intimate name of Krishna. But Krishna will be addressed in Bhagavad Gita by different names, like 33 different names of Krishna has been addressed, and Arjuna has been called by 20 different names. And similarly, Bhima also is called by different names. So, like example, Krishna can be called as Hrishikesha or Madhava or Achyuta, Madhusudana, Govinda, Vasudev, Devakinandan, Yashodanandan, Parthasarthi, Keshava, Janardana, and many more actually. Similarly, Arjuna is called like Dhananjaya, Partha, Gudakesha. So, the significance of having or addressing each other with different names indicates that various significant points actually. It talks about how the personal nature of the conversation is between Arjuna and Krishna and the loving reciprocation. So this indicates that they had a very loving relationship, and even in transcendental relationship, it's all loving relationship, right? So with this, I think we'll complete this session, and we'll begin with chapter 1, verse 1 in the next session. And this most of the points are taken from Bhagavad Gita as it is, and there's another book, Surrender Unto Me. This is also by Burijan Prabhu, and it is mostly focusing on the purports given by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So with this, we'll stop here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj ki jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Bol.